Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 34 of Divergent Dialogues. Today, we're going to be talking about autism, ADHD, and hormones. Teena and I are really excited about this episode because we think this will be helpful for a lot of people, particularly people with uteruses that have, menstrual cycles and, all the fun, not so fun things. And I think it's something that a lot of people don't really know about or really talk about, but it can have such a profound impact. I'm going to let Teena take this away, as this is, I think, like a special interest for you or a sub
Yeah,
special interest.
yeah, sub-special interest, I think it you could definitely say. I find it really, really fascinating. And my knowledge, I guess, on this stuff came about from like my own personal experience, understanding that, we all know about those really annoying, stupid phrases around menstruating and, you know, mood swings and all of that kind of stuff that implies that we become irrational and we can't be trusted when our hormones are fluctuating. And as much as I push back against those kinds of comments or jokes, rabbit ears, there is some truth to it, because I certainly know that leading up to menstruation, or with those hormonal fluctuations, that I personally really struggle with my mood, my tolerance. Everything becomes super irritating, to the point that I irritate myself. So I can't stand the sound of my own voice sometimes, and that led me to trying to figure out what's all this about. So hormonal fluctuations, they do impact neurodivergent people differently from neurotypical people. And that has a lot to do with our heightened sensory processing. We have those differences in our amygdala, in our sensory processing systems. So we feel those fluctuations a lot more intensely. And so our experience with this stuff is much more intense. We all know about PMS, but there's also a bigger one, I guess, known as PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. And it is, a much more severe form of PMS that affects around 5 to 8% of people who menstruate. But unlike PMS, which, might cause mild discomfort, mood changes, things like that, PMDD, it causes more severe mood swings, much more pain, and other symptoms such as, depression and anxiety, quite severe anxiety. So, yeah, a little bit of an overview of what we're talking about today.
Yep, yeah. And I guess Teena's really great with remembering facts. I kind of remember the gist or the relationship, but like numbers and facts and things, it's unless it's particularly unusual, my brain doesn't tend to remember. But Teena, did you have any like knowledge around like biologically what, like, obviously it's the fluctuation in hormones, but are there particular hormones that like have a part to play or
Yes, I'm glad you asked, Kate.
it's almost like we had these things prepared earlier.
Yes. Well, so let me tell you about the hormones that are impacted with PMDD and the particular hormonal fluctuations that we're talking about. So it is estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. They are the ones that typically influence like mood and cognition. So when in the lead up to menstruation, our estrogen levels drop. And with that, like, estrogen helps to regulate our dopamine levels. And as neurodivergent people, we're kind of lacking in natural dopamine production. So when estrogen is dropping and dopamine is going lower, our brains are kind of like, WTF, where are you taking all of our fuel? We can't do anything. I've kind of conceptualized my brain as a bit of it's like a potato, because potatoes like super versatile and they can do lots of things. A potato can be a super casual chip that you're just eating while walking around. It can be a real fancy mash, or like a slice it up into a potato bake. It's a classic. Everyone loves it. Or a fancy AF like gratin. So anyway, in the lead up to menstruation, I like to think of my brain as going into its mashed potato phase, but not fancy mash, like lumpy, mum, what are you doing kind of mash. And that's because, without estrogen, without dopamine, it's like I'm struggling to regulate everything. I have my ADHD medication, that's great, but the effects of that medication aren't as great in that lead up. So that's estrogen and dopamine that are affected. And then progesterone is like, you go through progesterone withdrawal as well, which is, we're not producing as much. And that is going to, like, that fuels the triggering of the anxiety, depression, irritability. That's what's happening with the progesterone. And testosterone, there's that really can affect mood shifts as well, related to mood shifts and irritability. So they're the ones that we're kind of looking at that create the chaos for us.
Yeah. I loved your potato example. I was trying not to laugh because I didn't want to laugh, like stuff up the audio by laughing, but I thought that was absolutely hilarious and really relatable.
Well, yeah, it's kind of just developed over time, but I find it really helpful to have a visual representation of how I'm feeling. So, when I'm in like potato bake phase, then I'm kind of doing all the things I need to do, like autopilot stuff. When I'm in my gratin phase, then I'm switched on and I'm creating amazing things. I've got great ideas. I'm on point. Yeah, I'm refined and sophisticated.
I love that. I love it. I love a visual as well. So I think particularly for a podcast, if people are just listening, like hopefully they're just seeing their own potatoes. What? Where's my potato at right now? And yes, potatoes are super versatile. And I better stop, otherwise I'm going to go on like a rant about how much I like potatoes. But anyway, so I think like in my personal experience, I think probably when I was younger, I experienced PMDD or some of those, but I also used to experience a lot of pain. But as I got older, things seemed to kind of, I don't know, even out or whatever. And I do notice that when before I menstruate, I can't remember which phase that is or whatever, like I do, my sensory sensitivities tend to increase. Like my body feels really sensitive. It might be a bit of pain, but even just like noises or whatever, like it just everything, like my tolerance for sensory input is even lower. Who knew that was impossible? But for me, I don't really get that those big emotional shifts. Like maybe a little bit, but I definitely know some folks whose names I won't name, who my wife, who have this. I love her very much. Who unfortunately is quite impacted by the menstrual cycle and being an ADHDer and having these experiences, and it can be really really challenging because it's such an all-encompassing emotional experience, and at the time you like that's your reality and you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm having all these emotions and this is what's it. Whereas now when she gets into that, I guess, phase or state, and I can go not in a way, because like the people like, oh, you're just on your period, like not like that, because then that just makes her more mad, but just kind of being like, hey darling, like, do you think maybe you're going to be getting your period soon? Do you think maybe that's what's going on, why you're feeling this way? Or like, is this actually something that, needs to be addressed when you talk about it, blah, blah, blah. And just having that knowledge has been really helpful for me and her, because we can make sense of it a little bit, and
Yeah.
kind of identify what's going on. And, like, there might be some unresolved stuff that maybe needs to be discussed or whatever, but it might not be this like huge thing that it feels like at the time, because your hormones are like running wild. So yeah, I don't know if Teena, like, you were happy to share a little bit of like your experience with it.
Yeah, definitely. I like used to get a lot of pain and discomfort as well in my menstruating phase. And I would also experience like quite heavy bleeding as well. So I've since I've got the Marina, which is a what's it called? Like fertility device thing, but it also
Intrauterine device.
yes,
Yes.
that's it. Thank you.
Can
And
remember acronyms. That is something
oh,
I can remember.
terrible at acronyms. Terrible. I can barely, yeah, remember the normal ones. But and that's like that releases like localized hormones into the uterus, which has helped tremendously for me. It's helped me tremendously with some of the pain stuff. And but it also means that I don't actually bleed anymore, but I still experience the cycling. So it can be a bit tricky trying to figure it out when the fluctuations aren't as big. My hormonal fluctuations aren't quite as intense, but still there. And now, instead of the pain and so forth, my tolerance for touch in particular goes out the window. I struggle with like the wind blowing past me, and irritating me, like, oh my gosh, you're touching my skin, don't blow on me.
Yeah.
Nature.
Yep. All the air conditioning. Can't stand
Yeah,
air conditioning blowing on you. Yeah.
yeah, air conditioning, the fan, things like that. But then I also can't tolerate being hot, so it's a real battle within myself. How frustrating.
I feel
um
like as an autistic person, you need like to have like someone who is just constantly attending to your sensory needs. Like if you just have this,
yeah,
this, I don't know what the title, like the title of the job would be, but just like this person who's like their sole job is to like help you with your sensory comforts or something. I mean, highly unrealistic, but
yeah, or like I fantasize about that story, like the boy in the bubble.
yeah.
Yeah, imagine having your own ecosystem that is completely set up to meet your sensory needs at any given time. Perfect temperature, perfect, airflow, perfect sound.
Sounds
Oh my
nice.
goodness.
That sounds
Amazing.
great. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think getting off topic, but that sounds like that sounds like really comfy and nice.
Yeah.
Um, I
But
was
also I do still experience the mood fluctuations as well. Yeah, I get very rigid in my routine, and yeah, it's any alterations, delays, interference, inconvenience that is thrust upon me, and it disrupts my routine. That is, yeah, really difficult for me to tolerate, and it has, that is the thing that is likely to trigger a meltdown for me during that time, is the routine stuff.
yeah, definitely. I'm in a similar or similarish, I guess. What was it, last year? I decided that because I was having a lot of gynecological issues, I decided to have something called an endometrial ablation, which essentially, I don't know, they like put a hot water balloon something or other, and basically like it destroys the lining of your uterus, which means that you can no longer have children. Well, I mean, you can no longer carry a pregnancy. And I guess my partner and I, we both decided that we didn't really want to have kids. We got two fur babies. We're happy with that. Um, And yeah, anyway, so I had that procedure. So yeah, I no longer get periods really. And I have an interuterine device, but I did notice that um even though I don't have the bleeding, like I do still kind of get a bit of that fluctuation still. Like every month I'll have that time where like I feel a little bit more tender, a little bit more sensitive, but it's not as pronounced as it used to be. Um, and I guess another thing to think about, like from a sensory perspective, like having a period, the smell, the feeling, the feeling of tampons or pads or whatever. Period undies, best thing ever made in existence. Like that was like once I had those, I was like, oh my god, this is so much better, because like I couldn't tolerate a tampon, or the pads were just like you put it on exactly perfectly how it felt comfortable, and then obviously it doesn't stay that way. So
Yeah.
again, like I think when it comes to gynecological challenges or just the normal kind of cycle of it, like for a lot of autistic people in particular, there's a lot of this sensory stuff that maybe isn't taken into account. So, like your body is feeling really sensitive, your emotions are heightened, and a lot of people, they have to go to school, go to work, do whatever it is. Like there's not a lot of accommodations. It's kind of like, oh, well, you have a period, like, 50% of the population has that. So what? But, and for someone who isn't neurodivergent, of course, that there's those challenges. But as a neurodivergent person, it's like, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And I remember when I was in high school, and it was really, really hard to cope with all of these feelings in my body and these emotions. And yeah, it was really difficult.
Yeah, it is. And I think that there's a few they have done a few studies on PMDD in amongst autistic women, and the results are quite varied. So they do need to do more research there. But there is autistic women consistently present with higher, like they meet criteria for PMDD in higher rates than non-autistic women. So yeah, autistic women are experiencing these much more severe PMS type symptoms than non-autistic people. And I think that interestingly, importantly, I should say, is the addition of the severe anxiety and symptoms like of depression that come along with the PMDD, where it's like when you become aware of all of this stuff, you can put things in place to support yourself. But when you're not aware, but more importantly, when people are telling you things like, oh, it's just a period, half the population deals with this, why are you carrying on so much? Then you just internalize that and see it as being like I'm overreacting again. But you're not. Like, and like you said before, Caitlin, in that moment you might be having an intense response or reaction to something that next week won't be such a big deal, but in that moment, because of those differences in your hormones at that time, it is real. That is what you're feeling. And that's not to say take action and quit your job, leave your relationship and sell your house because those feelings are real at that time. It's more just about being kind to yourself and compassionate and remembering this is all what I'm feeling right now, but my hormones are out. Next week, I'll see what my opinion on this topic is and take action then.
Yeah, so I had two thoughts around what you just said. First one was, it's usually the other 50% of the population that doesn't menstruate that that say those things. But also sometimes it can be older folks who haven't had a lot of accommodations for a lot of these things. And it's kind of like, suck it up and get over it sort of mentality. But, we're in a day and age where we don't have to just suck it up anymore. And, some of these things can be supported quite easily if people have the knowledge around it and what's going on with their bodies, and empowered to be able to do things to help themselves. And before, when I was talking, by no means am I saying that if you have these strong emotions when you're experiencing your period, that it isn't valid. Like, I find
Yeah.
sometimes, like, it's rooted in, it might have been something that you've been bottling up for ages, and you finally, you're saying it. But if you were having a discussion about it at a different time, perhaps it wouldn't be like, you'd feel more grounded in that conversation, as opposed to like really kind of reactive to that. So
Yeah, absolutely.
that you have to dismiss things that come up, but sometimes it might just be about, okay, well, maybe I'll write that down, or let my partner know, or my family or friends or whoever know that this is something I do want to talk about, but maybe at a different date when I'm feeling more regulated, and we can kind of problem solve, or validate from a position where we're feeling regulated. So
Yeah,
just wanted to
absolutely.
make sure
And
that people aren't feeling super invalidated, because that's not what mine I was meaning.
and I think I have to go back to something else you just said as well, which is another one of my little special interest things, that about older folk being the ones telling us that about sucking it up. Everyone gets a period, or 50% of the population, because they come from a time in history when that was the message sent to them. But more so on that menstruation and challenges, difficulties associated with menstrual cycles, these are all women's issues. So what we know is that historically women's issues have been like largely dismissed in the medical world and overlooked for research and consideration and understanding. These women's issues are they do have less attention. So things like even just your regular PMS, but PMDD, it just doesn't get the recognition or the understanding. So people do tend to dismiss it because no one understands the significance of it and the significant impact that it can have. So we haven't developed a proper understanding, which means it's difficult to offer compassion when we don't have understanding, and we also don't have like treatment plans, pathways, or interventions that are kind of well developed and established.
Yeah. And it just reminds me, that saying, like, oh, it's all in your head. It's like, well, yeah, like, our brain is in our head, and we have a body.
Yeah.
Our experience is largely in our body.
Yeah.
And our brain's connected to our body. So, like, literally anything you experience it originates in your head, I would say, at some point. So yes, they're right, but also,
Yeah.
the more we understand these things, it's like, oh, we can actually do something about this. So just because you're having an experience that other people don't understand or can't identify doesn't mean that it's not happening. And something that a lot of my clients have identified is that, particularly ADHDers, when they're like the week leading up to their period, they don't feel like their ADHD medication is working as well for them. And it's, when I was writing my blog post about ADHD and hormones, I was looking at the literature, and as you said, Tina, there really isn't a lot. It's very scarce. So a lot of health professionals, doctors, GPs, psychiatrists, they may not really know this. And often my clients are going and having to kind of advocate for themselves and go, hey, like, this is, I've had my period my whole life, and I've started this medication, and I'm noticing this pattern here. And unfortunately, sometimes people get dismissed, but in the literature, it does seem like there can be some changes to, and again, putting this out there, Tina and I aren't doctors, we're not psychiatrists. We're definitely not saying that you make any changes to your medication. But you need to consult your psychiatrist or your doctor or whoever. But this is something
not
that,
doctors yet.
We're not, yeah. Well, we will be doctors one day, like doctor of philosophy,
Yeah,
but not like
not
medically.
medical doctor.
But yeah, I just want to strongly preface that because I don't want people coming, oh, you're telling people to change their medication. That's not what we're saying. This is in the literature. If you look
Yep.
at my blog post, you can see the references and everything. But yeah, I think Teena, you were talking a little about a bit about this, how there can be some changes made potentially to help women to be able to get the most out of their medication all through the month, not just like 3 or 2 weeks out of the month.
Yeah, and I think working with your prescribing doctor is really like vital to understanding this, and but I mean understanding it yourself. But yeah, when your doctor also has a solid understanding of this, being able to come up with a medication plan, a treatment plan that accounts for those fluctuations during the month to offer that extra support in the lead up to menstruation, it can be really helpful because like you were saying, Caitlin, the literature tells us that that the medications don't necessarily have the same effect, but lots of studies also tell us that with estrogen drops, dopamine, and all of those sorts of things. And we know that those are the neurotransmitters, the hormones that regulate our emotions, our focus, attention, regulate lots of different things for us. But being able to advocate for yourself is I think the first step, because like I was saying, any female orientated condition generally has a lot less understanding and awareness. And I think that because a lot of the symptoms associated with PMDD are also typically female orientated things like anxiety, aka hysteric neurotic women, things like headaches, bloating, joint pain, things like that we experience in association with PMDD. They're easily dismissed things, but they can absolutely impact our ability to function. And just we deserve to have a good quality of life. And like you said, all month, not just for these like 2 weeks of the month when our hormones are a bit more balanced and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
And it is about quality of life. And for anyone who's listening that's been really invalidated around a lot of this stuff, hopefully some of this is validating some of those experiences for you, because it's really hard when you're plucking up the courage to seek help, and then the people that you're going to for help aren't really understanding what's going on for you. But I guess the other consideration as well is, particularly with ADHD medication, like it is like a strictly controlled substance, because there are some non-stimulant ADHD medications, but they're typically stimulants. And I think part of what may be the issue, sorry, I've got something in my throat. Part of what might be the issue is that there can sometimes be a lack of flexibility when it comes to ADHD medication, because it is controlled. Like, for example, like I recently had to make some dosage changes with my medication, and the chemist is like questioning, like, oh well, you just got this filled the other day, a week or two ago, why are you getting it? Like, there's like, I even like one time one of my clients basically got harassed at the chemist because they turned up like 1 or 2 days early to get their ADHD medication. Like there can be like a lot of suspicion around it. Like, as soon, I mean, I don't know if you've experienced that, Teena, but this suspicion of like, oh yeah, back for more medication. It's like, well, yeah, it's because like I have ADHD and like I need it.
And I remembered today. Sorry, it's 2 days early.
Yeah. So I think like I could see that happening. Like, either there might just be some sort of systemic restrictions around
Mm.
prescribing in a more flexible manner, but also like turning up to the chemist and the chemist being like, oh, why are you getting this and this and this and that? Like, and like questioning you, like kind of like you're like naughty or doing something wrong or like a criminal or
Yeah, my pharmacist actually once, because I was getting a few scripts filled all at once, like, yeah, questioned me, do you really need all of these? And I'm like, do I need to give you my whole backstory to justify why my very qualified and experienced psychiatrist has prescribed these?
yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that there's some work to do there as well. Like
Mm.
for maybe for folks that don't menstruate, don't have big hormone fluctuations, they can have a set and forget dose that works for them. But for a lot of folks that do have hormone fluctuations, that's not going to work for us. And as you said, Tina, and we've both said, like for quality of life, there may need to be a bit more flexibility when it comes to those things. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's my not rant, what is it? I don't know. My impassioned
Mm.
speech about that stuff. But I'm just thinking, so I guess, we've talked a little bit about PMDD, how it impacts. Clearly there's some systemic issues there. But I mean, what can people do about it? Might be helpful for people to have a bit of an idea of. So I guess, yeah, happy to hear your thoughts first, Tina, and I'll put.
Well, in my own journey with all of this stuff, I looked into naturopath. I have an amazing naturopath. She is like she's known in Queensland. She's the neurodivergent naturopath. She's amazing, and yeah, because she herself is also neurodivergent, which I find incredibly helpful because again, as a neurodivergent person, I have lots of different sensitivities, which include some food-based stuff and textures, tastes, all that kind of jazz. I really struggle a lot with swallowing tablets, especially, big ones that you typically see with vitamins and so forth. Yeah, I feel like I'm choking and it just throws me off for half the morning until my body digests it because I can feel the whole process. It's horrible.
Yeah.
And this particular naturopath, I really value her because I can talk to her about all of these sensitivities and struggles with different things, and she gets it rather than just giving me all of these naturopathic supplements to help manage with hormonal fluctuations and anxiety, depression, things like that. She listens to what I'm saying and works with me to find the thing that I can tolerate, manage. It's been amazing. But yeah, like speaking to a properly qualified naturopath can be helpful. She's able to read and interpret my blood tests to understand where my hormones are at and things like that, and give me natural supplements to help balance things out a bit. And that has been really helpful in my own managing of all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think some things that can be really helpful are, having a good knowledge around this sort of stuff. And I think, how do I say this? When it comes to professionals, sometimes this is from my own not my own personal, yeah, I hope that I wouldn't react in this way because I guess, okay, I'll talk about the way that I work. The way that I work with my clients is that if someone brings something to me and they feel like it's part of their experience or happening for them, we'll have a discussion about it. And I would say like 99.9% of the time my clients are like 100% spot on. And I trust my clients and I trust their intuition, and and I'm led by that. I'm not here to tell them what their experience is or isn't. But I would say that a lot of professionals may not necessarily operate in that way, and particular professions may work from that kind of that power over dynamic where like I'm the
Yep.
professional, I know all the things, I tell you to do the things, you do the things. um, so sometimes when you are interacting with a professional who kind of works in that sort of way, if you come in and go, look, I think I've got PMDD, I listened to a podcast the other day and they said that XYZ blah 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 blah, might not be received super well. So sometimes it might just be about bringing it up just gently, just being like, oh, hey, like I've noticed, how to say it might be better to present it from your own experience. So you might be like, oh, I've noticed a little bit before my periods, like my ADHD medication doesn't seem to work as well. Or, you might have one of those apps, I forget the name. There's a few like period tracker apps where
Oh, yeah.
track your symptoms and go, oh, hey, look, I've been tracking my periods for the last few weeks. Like, can I show you some of this information? So if you go from a place of, here's the data, here's my experience, here's the data, here's the facts, here's the evidence, then they're probably more likely to be open, and they might kind of go, oh, well, maybe we should look into this, da 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 da.
Mm.
Whereas if you go in there and go, I listen to a podcast or an Instagram reel and I think I have PMDD, I think sometimes that's when professionals can get a bit funny about it, because there's that whole thing of, oh, everyone has ADHD and everyone has autism and blah 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 blah. But anyway,
Yeah.
hopefully that's making sense, because as I said, like I can't predict how everyone's health professional operates, but in some professions it can be a bit of a different dynamic. Whereas like for Teena and I, because
Mm.
we're social workers, our training was to kind of work with or along people, whereas other professions that might not have kind of been the lens that they were taught through. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But yeah, I value people's insights when they have seen something on, yeah, podcast, Instagram, whatever, TikTok even, and they're sharing how, what they've heard and how their experience relates to that. But yeah, I agree with Caitlin that not all healthcare professionals see that the same. And I guess the challenge is that there's lots of really great content out there that is so helpful for people understanding their experiences and being able to put a name to it. But there's also lots of content out there that really minimizes and talks about traits and symptomology in a really kind of superficial way, which does feed into that, oh, everybody is a bit autistic or everybody's a bit ADHD, because they are talking about those similar traits and symptoms sort of thing at that really low end of the scale where it's not problematic.
Yeah.
So it does cause confusion in the conversation.
Yeah, definitely. So I think, yeah, and another thing to consider as well is that if you are seeking support from someone and you're not feeling like they're meeting your needs, sometimes it's about finding someone else, perhaps someone who does have more of a specialization around like this sort of area. Maybe, maybe someone who's neurodivergent and a professional in that area if possible. It's a bit tricky sometimes, but yeah, like, if you feel in your body and in your intuition that there's something going on, yeah, sometimes if you see someone who's a specialist in that area or someone who has more of an understanding around neurodivergence, then that might be helpful as well. But yeah, so I think that might be a good place to wrap it up. Or unless Teena, there was something.
I have to say one more thing.
Okay, yep.
I think above all else, it's really important to make sure you're not approaching this stuff from a I have to fix it kind of lens. I think it's absolutely important to maybe do some investigating blood tests, things like that, to understand if there is space to intervene and reduce the impact that these hormonal fluctuations are having. But never is it about you need to sort your shit out and stop with all this carry on. It's,
Yeah.
it's absolutely not that, because if you are a person who does experience greater hormonal fluctuations and in much more intense sensitivity to all of these things, you're not it's not realistic to aim to make it all go away so you can carry on functioning at 100% capacity all month long. You absolutely do what you can to reduce the impact, but also accepting that this is a part of life. And in the lead up to menstruation, or whenever you experience your symptomology around this stuff, be kind to yourself. Build a life that supports what you know about yourself. For me, that is in the lead up to menstruation. I do turn into mashed potato brain, so I try and reduce my decision making with certain things. I pay attention to increasing protein in my diet. Like I'll have a protein shake for breakfast, because that really helps. If I'm going to force myself to do anything in that week, it'll be to keep up with some sort of movement, because that's also really good for helping with extra dopamine production. So yeah, it's definitely not about just trying to get to a level of productivity that is consistent across the month. It's about intervening to improve your quality of life, your well-being, but also make some adjustments to accommodate the fact that you struggle or are less productive or less cognitively sharp during these periods.
Yeah, thank you, Teena. That's a really, really good point. And it is about balance. And there's no such thing as a bad emotion. All emotions have their place. It's information for us. As I said before, sometimes you might have times of the month where you're more sensitive about things, but usually there is an element of truth in that feeling or in that experience. It's just that the time your ability to process that in a way that's helpful for you might be a bit more challenging. But at the end of the day, you're completely right. Like, at the end of the day, you're autistic, ADHD, PMDD, whatever. There are definitely accommodations and strategies and medications that can help. But at the end of the day, like, your body just moves through the world a little bit more differently. So having compassion, and I think for a lot of my clients, just knowing that it's hormonal helps a lot.
Yeah.
Because they can go, okay, is this something that I need to address right now? Or is this because it's the week before my period? And, they might have like a period tracker app or something like that. So just having that answer is enough to kind of give, because I think what happens is sometimes people just feel so dysregulated, like, oh my gosh, what's going on? What's going on? I need to figure it out.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I think this is a hormonal thing. I can let that sit for a week or a few days, and then I can revisit and go, oh, is this something that I need to address? So really important message, Teena. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Alrighty. I think, we might end it there, because I think, it's probably a bit of a longer episode than usual, which is fine. I don't know. My concept of time's not great, but I'm looking at the time and thinking that. But that's all good. So we're really this year's going to be awesome. I think we have a lot of really cool topics coming up. And also we're going to have a lot more guests this year. I think some really great discussions that I'm looking forward to, because I love it when we have guests. So I usually learn something new. So I'm just sitting there, like, much like our listeners, and go, oh, this is cool, or this is interesting. So
me too.
So cool. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. And you'll hear us next time.
Yes.
Something like that.
Bye.